Will my magic suffer if I'm not being consistent? That's part, but not all, of the question that I'm answering today that was sent in as an Ask a Witch question. For those of you who are new to our channel, how the Ask a Witch videos work is that people send in their questions and one of the Sanctum instructors or volunteers will answer based on their own personal practices. These answers aren't universally applicable. We all practice differently and no one can tell you which way to which, but they are our answers. In this case, this is my answer. So I'm not going to read aloud the entire question, as I do believe that it contains some private and personal information. Essentially, someone wrote in who has multiple mental health diagnoses that impact their ability to do daily practice. They said, I feel guilty that I'm not practicing, and I'm not practicing because I don't remember to. Will my magic suffer if I'm not being consistent? Will I lose the trust of my deities, spirits, ancestors, etc. if I forget about them sometimes? Do they understand my brain works different? My ex-teacher was a firm believer that deity would take away powers if you ignored them, and you may or may not get them back. I'm not sure if I believe that because I don't believe that I have powers, I just have the ability to use magic, which is an energy that is beyond my understanding. But can I lose the ability to use magic because I'm not using that muscle and it atrophies? I know that I have lost a few abilities I used to have, like seeing spirits and psychometry, and that it's getting harder for me to talk with my deities, spirits, ancestors, etc., and I don't like it. I feel alone a lot. If I've upset them, how do I make it up to them and not forget about them when I go through these periods in the future? There's a lot to answer here. So as usual, what I'm going to do is take it in parts and answer each part. So to start with, my deep sympathies that you feel guilty when you're not practicing. I feel the same way. I am a disabled witch. I have multiple disabling conditions, some of which I'm still trying to understand and adapt to. I have relatively recent diagnoses, and there's still some degree of mystery where I have many physicians trying to figure out what exactly is going on and what medication works in order to tackle my symptoms and give me more of my life back. But it may be that for the rest of my life, this is the functionality I have, or that it may get worse with time. Some of my diagnoses are for mentally disabling conditions, and some of them are for physically disabling conditions, but they all have an impact on my ability to practice witchcraft daily. So let me clarify what I mean here. I am always a witch. I don't cease to be a witch if I'm not practicing every day, and there are daily magical things that I sustain and that I keep going every single day, regardless of whether or not I have time to cast a spell or do a magical working or even get out my tarot deck. Additionally, I am a professional witch. I teach witchcraft classes. So I'm constantly researching and writing about witchcraft, and I do believe that learning about witchcraft is part of being a witch and part of the practice. So I know that when I say I take days off from practice, it may sound disingenuous because it's like, well, no, you don't. Yes, I do. There are times where I don't meditate. There are times I don't work with my ancestors. There are times I don't check on the spirits that I work with or don't send them to do any tasks, and I'm really, really bad about forgetting to give them payment and forgetting to give them offerings. There are times I don't sit and commune with my ancestors, a lot of the time because I'm feeling guilty and then I avoid it. there are times that I know there's something that I wanted to do magically and I put it off and I put it off and I put it off. So, will my magic suffer if I'm not being consistent? I'm not going to lie and say that I haven't noticed that when I've been away from certain tasks, they're harder when I return to them, because it would be a lie. When I haven't cooked for a while, I still remember how to cook, but there's definitely kind of a curve to picking it back up again. It's the same thing when I take a break from doing art. I'm really, really bad about consistent art practice. I'm really bad about consistent music practice. And so I sometimes take breaks for a long time while I'm dealing with a mental health issue, dealing with an emotional health issue, dealing with a physical health issue, or dealing with one disaster after another, renovating Victorian property, or focusing on the garden because it's time to get the seeds in, or focusing on the garden because it's time to get the harvest in. Life gets in the way. But I don't know if I want to use the word suffer. I have to reinvigorate my practice. I have to reinvest in my practice, and it comes back. It's not gone forever, and I'm not tormented because I've lost it, but I do need to try again to pick it back up and to reach the skill level I was at. It comes back quickly. I don't know if you've ever learned a skill like drawing, painting, cooking, playing an instrument, riding a bike, doing martial arts. If you take time away, then you can tell, but you can relearn to the same degree of skill without as much time and effort as it took to get you there the first time. Will I lose the trust of my deities, spirits, ancestors, etc. if I forget about them sometimes? Unfortunately, I think that that's entirely dependent on which deities, spirits, ancestors, etc. I have some deities that I work with, spirits that I work with, that are very forgiving of my priorities, of my spoon level, of, you know, how much time I have to give them. And I have other entities that I work with that are not as forgiving about it, and that do find me lacking. Some of them will do me the favor of coming and poking me about it and being like, hey, you're supposed to be doing stuff. Others will just wait until I seek them out, and then they're like, hi, it's been a while. So, it really depends on what you work with. Do they understand my brain works different? I hope so. I have found that some entities I work with fully understand disability, neurodivergence, having to stop your house from falling apart, having to harvest from the garden so that you have food to eat. And I have found other deities that I have worked with to be extremely demanding, and to refuse to recognize things like mortgage payments. Just none of that matters. Some of you may be familiar with this oddness about the spiritual world, where some things fully understand, like rent is due, oh, I have to not do this thing because it's physically unsafe, or oh, I'm sorry, I'm sick, I can't do that. And other entities are like, what is this thing that you call rent? You should sell all of your belongings and dedicate yourself to me entirely, and, you know, leave off morning dew in the woods somewhere. And they're very resentful if you're not capable of doing that. Now, it's up to you. You could just be like, you know, I'm not going to work with anything that doesn't understand that I'm neurodivergent or that I have other demands on me. I've largely distanced myself from things that are unwilling to understand my boundaries and my limitations. I find that I am already hard enough on myself about my boundaries and limitations. And I already move my goalposts and I already move my boundaries for people and I cross my lines for people, and I don't really need anything that I work with magically to do that to me as well. So I haven't severed every relationship with things that are more demanding than I'm comfortable with, but I've severed a lot of them. This part, my ex-teacher was a firm believer that deity would take away powers if you ignored them, and you may or may not get them back. While I do believe that you can make an oath to an entity and swear over your magical and or spiritual self in service to that entity, and they can enhance your abilities and give you help or power in exchange for your service. I do believe that these kind of contracts and these kind of spiritual bargains and these kind of balanced relationships exist. In fact, I think that very many religions are structured so that the bargain is, I will worship you and proselytize to others about you and attempt to convert people to following you, and in exchange you will protect me and provide for me. That's the deal, right? And I do believe that depending on the faith, religion, or spiritual path, there can be consequences if you sever that arrangement or say, I'm not going to work with you anymore. There are deities that punish when you cease. I also believe that you can reclaim any power that was originally yours. Now, you say in your question that you don't believe you have powers, you just believe you have the power or ability to use magic. I'm not going to debate terminology. I'm going to say that, let's say that there is an energy that is only yours, uniquely yours, and that when you pray to a deity or praise that deity or proselytize about that deity, they somehow gain something from that, right? And that there is an energy in the world that witches can tap into and witches can manipulate that is beyond the singular religion of any faith tradition in the world, because it is recognized all over the world and used by witches all over the world. Let's say that that is the foundation to this question. I don't think that any individual deity gave that energy to you, your singular energy, nor do I believe any deity can take it away from you, nor do I believe that any one deity can claim to have created the energy that witches tap into and manipulate, nor do I believe that any one deity can strip away the ability of a person to tap into or manipulate that energy. I do believe that they can punish. I believe that they can hurt. I've used Job as an answer before to this question or similar questions where Hasatan tempts Job into denying Yahweh by destroying everything. And Job stays grateful and loving to Yahweh and is eventually rewarded with new children, because that makes up for the dead children. And I've used the example of Jonah, where Yahweh wanted for this one particular person to go and proselytize in a nation he didn't want to go to. And he could punish, and he could cajole, and he could threaten, and he could even kill Jonah, but he could not make Jonah say yes. And in both of these cases, there is something that Yahweh wants from these people. With Job, he wants Job's ongoing praise and admiration and gratitude. with Jonah, he wants his compliance, and for Jonah to comply by going and proselytizing and spreading the worship of Yahweh in Nineveh. Why does Yahweh want the people in Nineveh to worship him? Obviously, he gets something in exchange. If they didn't want something from us, they wouldn't try to manipulate us to get it from us. I don't think that they can claim to take it away, nor do I think they can claim to have given it to us. But that is my personal belief about the structure of the universe, and I'm not asking anyone else to align with it. It's just mine. So you asked my opinion. My opinion is no. Deity cannot take away your power to access magic. Okay. The next portion. Can I lose the ability to use magic because I'm not using that muscle and it atrophies? No, I don't think so. I think everyone has the ability to use magic. I think absolutely everyone has the ability to use magic and to be affected by it. And it is not something about ourselves that we can truly lose. It is something that we can wall off. It is something that we can isolate ourselves from. It is something that we can deny and choke down on and shove down and put in a box and hide in our mental attic. I have a lot of students, actually, who when they were children had something so frightening to witness spiritually happen to them, and they slammed everything shut and walled it up and put it away, and they are now trying to undo that. And so far they have all had some degree of success. I'm not claiming that it's the success that they might necessarily want, but so far, if they really want it back, they can get at least some of it back. And I do believe that in some cases, the restriction on how much they're getting back has to do with the fact that there's still that trauma block on it. But also, I don't want to say that everyone's level of magical ability varies, because I think that we're all born with the same spark. But some people will fan that spark. This entire answer is full of so many bent and malshapen metaphors, and I just apologize. But not everyone is going to fan that spark, use that spark all the time, and really embrace everything. And I do believe that magical abilities vary. However, I do think everyone has that spark. I don't think anything can take it from us, and I don't think that not using it will make it go away. As for losing abilities that you used to have, sometimes that happens, in my personal opinion, because they were hurting us, and so we stop using them, or because we find alternate ways to approach what we're trying to accomplish, or because we don't prioritize it, and so it becomes kind of like something we would need to practice again to pick it back up. I don't think that you would be incapable of regaining ability that you lost because of a lack of prioritization, unless the lack of prioritization is related to something else going on. So, for example, I have a mental health condition that causes really severe brain fog, really severe, misty, foggy, muddy brain. And it has made some of the more intricate spell workings that I do, where I have to hold a lot of working parts in my mind at once, much more difficult. And in that case, that isn't because I wasn't using it so I lost it. It's because my brain is changing how it works, and it's going to be really hard for me to do those kind of workings. It would be the same thing if, say, part of my process, actually no, I'll just use, for the same reason, one of the things I used to do a lot magically was walk in the woods, walk hiking trails, climb rocks, climb mountains, get out in nature, go kayaking, go horseback riding, and do my workings while I was moving through nature. I am now very busy and quite disabled, and I don't do that as often as I used to. So I'm kind of losing those abilities at the same time as I'm losing the physical ability that made it possible for me to do that in the first place. And it's not because something has taken my magic from me, it's because I just can't really do that anymore. And that doesn't mean I'm not a witch, and it doesn't mean that my practice isn't full of other valuable ways to do workings, but that one might be out of reach. So can you lose the ability over time? Yes, but not because someone has stolen your spark from you because you disrespected them by not practicing. Okay. You say you feel alone a lot, and I sympathize. So do I. I have tried to make my peace with the fact that I'm lonely, and largely I have. I don't like people very much, and people don't like me very much. I'm difficult, and I find people difficult. The older I get, the more I understand one of my teachers having retreated into life away from everyone else. And to a certain extent, that's what I've done. I moved 2,500 miles away from the community that I was working with and within for over a decade. I'm largely out of contact with most of my family, and it's kind of just me and Yun a lot of the time, and of course our kid. But I turn to my deities and spirits and ancestors partially because of the fact that I am alone and I'm lonely, and I rely on them for companionship and guidance. I don't think that's healthy. And I think I over-rely on the spirit world to fill the need that I have for community and feeling connected. I would caution that some of the other things that you say you do, like reading books, knitting, spending time on social media, connecting with others, those are healthy things to do in moderation. And it is possible to spend too much time on witchcraft. I have definitely gone in that direction as well, where I way over prioritized my witchcraft practice and let everything else drop. And I had to weave witchcraft through my other things that I like to do in order to do them more often. So try and have a healthy balance. Lastly, if I've upset them, how do I make it up to them and not forget about them when I go through these periods in the future? So to start with, some things, depending upon the contract or bargain or structure of the relationship, won't be okay with it. If you go long times and you can't patch the relationship, you can just end it. This is true for friendships as well. There are some people who, if you just kind of ghost them, they won't accept your apologies and they will not allow you to reconnect. And you have to respect that. Others will have no atrophy of the relationship at all. I have friends that I don't go like 6 months in between us talking, and then I talk to them again and they're like, oh hi, I missed you, let's hang out. There are friendships that don't atrophy, and there are spiritual relationships that don't atrophy. And if you have that, great. I still recommend that the first thing that you do is say, I'm sorry for all the spectrum in between, the things that won't work with you anymore and won't understand, all the way to the things that there's no atrophy at all and they're fine and they're happy to see you again and they'll continue working with you. Start with saying, I'm sorry, and then asking, what can I do to repair our relationship, if you are willing to repair it, and then doing it. Lastly, how not to forget about them when you go through periods in the future where this happens again. I'm not sure how your brain works. I don't know whether to recommend that you get yourself a witchy calendar and that you have certain days that are marked for you to, reach out to the spirits you work with and practice, or if you're a Google Tasks person, or if you're a reminders on your phone person, or if you have a buddy that you can ask to remind you, or if you can weave it into your holiday celebrations like so many Christians do, where they really only acknowledge Yahweh on like Christmas and Easter. Maybe you can make a commitment to always recognize the solstices and the equinoxes. Oh, it's summer solstice today while I'm filming this, so happy summer solstice to everyone. But maybe you could do that. Maybe you could say, I'm going to practice every equinox and every solstice. And that way you know that you are going to do something 4 times a year. And on that day, you can give them an offering, tell them that you miss them, and try and accomplish one thing magically, even if it's just a cleansing and a re-upping of your home warts, right? So, or maybe you can split it up by season. In spring, I shall do magical spring cleaning. In winter, I shall do some inward deep journeying, and try and break it up by season. In most of my spiritual relationships that I maintain, as long as I'm checking in about every quarter of the year, we're good. But maybe yours will need more often. Maybe you can go once a year. I have an ancestor that I really only check in on her death day. Then I have ancestors that are with me all the time and that I'm in communication with all the time. So it's really up to what works in your life to help you remember to practice. But I hope that at least one of those tips works for you. To send us a question for Ask a Witch, you can join our Discord and ask there. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/sanctumofthecraft. Or you can email them to us at staff@sanctumofthecraft.org. Again, that's staff@sanctumofthecraft.org. Or you can drop them in the chat below. I am aware that on average, for every 20 questions we get sent, I'm only answering one of them. I am working on that ratio. I know I constantly say that, but I've actually created a dedicated filming day in my schedule where hopefully I will get more content out to all of you. And to those of you who just recently found us on YouTube, we're over 4,000 subscribers now. Welcome. I do want to point you at our website, sanctumofthecraft.org, where you can enroll in our ongoing courses. Right now, we have the 2nd year of A Witch's Poisons going up starting on June 28th. We have our Death Ritual and Magic course still going. We have our Tarot in-Depth course still going. I think it's called Mastery of the Tarot on there, which has been like a 1.5 year long course. Really incredibly in-depth information on the tarot. And yeah, check us out. Anyway, please remember to like and subscribe and send us your Ask a Witch questions and let us know what kind of content you want to see from us. Have a good day.